How does my master get to this place?
I can already feel my eyes twisting in their sockets at the prospect of what the adjudicator can and will do to me if I betray my thoughts. I can still hear furious fighting in the back, and it's dawning on me that I have no way out of this without being totally honest. I try to speak, but my throat is caking over with this familiar black foam. What? Head? I gurgle.
Yes. Go on.
Disquiet hisses, leaning in. I said, what's for her head? The sound of a bottle smashing against the table and then colliding with Disquiet's skull punctuates the air. As a thick green liquid pours down her robes, she shivers as it coats her and casts her eyes in the direction it was thrown. There she sees a tall, thin man with his hood up, white face mask and circular glasses shimmering in the light, smiling at her and clutching a second bottle of McGill's Black Sea extract. The entirety of its contents now enveloping Disquiet as she begins to slip back and fall into the thickening sludge.
Black Sea extract. Float or sink depending on your volition, huh?
Kraus grins at the bottle before looking over at me.
Why would you sell this?
He cries out incredulously. I would have shrugged, but I was still paralyzed. Disquiet writhes on the floor and shrieks as her contorted joints cannot free her from the liquid as it rapidly turns to concrete, anchoring her in place. Kraus looks around and spies the pierced bottle of adjudicator on the top shelf, the remaining contents now spilt onto the floor. He reads the label and begins to panic.
Oh god, oh fuck! What do I do, Sully? How do I stop this bitch from doing whatever it is she started doing to you?
Again, I can do nothing but gurgle, my last bit of resistance used in the declaration to Kraus. He stumbles over to me after stepping on Disquiet's chest. Much to her chagrin, he begins looking me over for a solution.
You won't find much there, dear.
Nell's voice calls from the regulars' lounge, Cheddar slung over her shoulder, and the inert body of Reverence being pulled by the collar around his neck. Seems Nell attached Cheddars to him for hilarity. She's weird like that. She's covered with blood and her eyes are wild with passion, but her voice and demeanor are completely calm. She tosses Reverence's body next to Disquiet's and gently sets Cheddar down by me, placing his favorite blanket in his mouth and looking me over.
Sullivan, I can fix this, but it's going to hurt.
Her eyes met mine, and I can see the reluctance in her face.
But you knew what you were signing up for when we first met, didn't you?
She pulls my head to her chest, kissing the top of it before whispering,
Do it for her, Sullivan.
And driving her palm square into my stomach. I felt the searing pain rush through me anew as her hand collected the bulk of the adjudicator in a small pool, pulling a bottle from inside her coat pocket and sealing it away. No sooner had the adjudicator left my body, a bright white light began to engulf my vision. The sound of my heartbeat filled my ears, and the last thing I heard before my consciousness faded was,
Find your truth, Sullivan. That is the only way to finish the detoxification effects.
It was Nell. She was pleading with me.
Find it and come back to us.
I couldn't tell you exactly what year it was, but I was younger. The bar wasn't the same, and I definitely did not have a mustache. I was tinkering with some drinks in the back of the bar when I heard a ring out as a hurried, much younger version of Kraus fell through the entranceway. The entertainment in the back stopping mid-song to see what the commotion was all about. He was beaten up, bruised, and his glasses were cracked. Welcome to... What the hell happened to you? Are you okay? I rushed over to pick him up when a much bigger man entered behind him, the fury on his face apparent.
You fucking freak. If you ever try to pull that shit again, I will make sure this feels like a massage in comparison.
His face was practically shaking with rage as he stormed off.
Never stopped me before, Dad.
Kraus choked between laughter, a tooth dislodged and rolled freely on the wooden floor. I sighed and helped him to his feet. I don't even want to know what you did this time. I groaned, getting him to the bar stool and offering him a rag and some ice to stop the swelling.
No, you do not.
He laughed, dabbing his right eye with the rag, and a bloodied grin stretched across his face.
What matters is yours is the first place I go to when things kick off. And we always have each other's backs.
Since day one of opening, literally. My shoulders fell as I tried to find him a good drink. One of these days, it's going to be too much for you. You know that, right?
Of course. That's the fun part. Figuring out which day it'll be. God, I hope it's on hump day.
He laughed. He snickered to himself before shouting,
Ah, fuck!
when his jaw moved too much. I looked at the top shelf and found a mixture I'd been sent earlier today. It was a locket shaped like a 4-leaf clover, with a thick golden chain hanging from its tips. A beautiful gold hue emanated from the center, and a single clasp acted as the opener. The label attached to the chain reading, Posithwaite and daughters give to you the luck serum, 1 part honey, 1 part scotch, and 1 part distilled fortunes. You will see your luck turn around at but a moment's notice, for better or for worse. Maybe this will stop you from getting the shit kicked out of you so much. I teased as I unclasped the vial and poured its contents into a small silver glass, the gold hue transferring to it and displaying a beautiful shimmer.
Well, maybe then you look like the hot one out of the two of us.
He jeered back, sharing a chuckle as he downed half and passes it to me. I smirked and joined him. A far smaller, puppy-like chowder bounced from the other room and leapt up on Kraus's lap, the once goofy boofing sounding now more like small borks, and the drool ever present as he licked the wounds covering Kraus and tried his best to comfort him, Kraus laughing the entire time.
Man, if I had a dog like this, I'd take any fucking job they had available.
He chuckled between slobbery kisses from Cheddar. The door to the bar opened again, and a young woman stepped in, early 20s and utterly spellbinding. Her slender figure cut through the noise and the atmosphere of the bar, her red hair flowing down her shoulders and across her chest in an elegant curl, eyes alight with the spark of life. I could not take my eyes off her, and Kraus calling me repeatedly dissipated into the ether as she walked up to me, a mixture of confidence and mania written across her face. Welcome to the spaces between. I'm Sully, and that little furry fella is Cheddar. The slightly bigger and louder one is Kraus. What can I get for you? Her smile immediately faded as soon as I was done with my introduction.
You don't.
She breathed, her soft voice a far cry from the croaky gruffness that I am accustomed to hearing, courtesy of Kraus. Is everything all right? I asked, already trying to figure out what kind of drink she may need, not focusing on the fact her demeanor was rapidly changing.
Sully. My Sully. You've forgotten me already?
Her eyes fell and the smile dropped into a deep, hateful scowl. Cheddar whimpered and leapt down from Kraus's lap and ran behind my legs.
Uh-oh, did you break a heart, Sully? That ain't like you, Chief.
Kraus chuckled and nursed his wounded, slobber-covered face.
If you don't recall who I am right now, Sully, I'm going to get very upset.
I stared. In all the years I'd ran that bar, I'd never seen her before, and I consider myself incredibly adept at remembering faces, especially someone as beautiful as her. I'm sorry, ma'am, but I don't... I began, stopping as I watched with a slack jaw what came next. The sound of Cheddar piddling behind me in fear and Kraus diving under the table and screaming.
What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck?
She screamed, her jaw unclenching and eventually dislocating, showing no signs of slowing down as her facial features began to coalesce and collapse under the pressure of the skin folding over. No tongue or teeth in sight anymore as the jaw stretched back and a smaller head began to peer out of the far reaches of the throat. Gleaming eyes and a horrific voice pushing through the echo of the scream rang out.
I am so deeply disappointed in you, Sullivan. You forgot the promise you made so long ago. You forgot the reasons you took this job. I thought love was the strongest binding force there is.
It shrugged its shoulders. The hair, skull, and face sagged back and drooped over the spine.
But I still believe the saying is true. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
I couldn't form sentences. I was gripped by a fear I had never known. The kind that slows down your movements as if wading through quicksand. The kind that seems to turn your cohesive thoughts into fractals and your once eloquent speech patterns into terrified stutters. I had seen many strange things in this job, but this took the cake.
Don't worry, I am not here to hurt you. For this was a test, and due to limitations, this wasteful corpse will be disposed of, and you can go about your ignorant existence. But
It leaned forward, and I could see the faint glint of a smile in the far back of its throat.
I will have a drink before I depart.
I swallowed, my throat dry and my eyes stinging as I realized I hadn't blinked. I shakily turned on my heel and frantically scanned the top shelf of the bar, desperate to find something that would suit this monstrosity's palate. The smallest object caught my eye, and the shape sealed the deal. It was a brain, splintered into two segments, one bubbling with gold liquid and the other a grayish substance that fogged over that side of the glass. Taking it down, I looked carefully at the note. The Pilgrim's Choice, for when we need to find our way once again. I sat it down in front of the creature, shaking hands, pouring out the champagne-smelling liquid first, then the gray matter that fogged over the glass, both coming together to form a brilliant silver concoction that smelled of elderberries. The creature laughed at my nervousness.
Perhaps you should get a drink yourself too, Sullivan. I think you'll need it.
Shit, maybe it was my nerves or the suggestive nature of their voice at the time, but I believed it. I grabbed a bottle from under the bar. It was a special blend I'd been working on myself, and now seemed as good a time as any to try it out. The bottle, in the form of a cracked heart, a blend of herbs and spices, filled my nose as I uncorked it and poured it into a clean glass, the green and yellow liquid bubbling the second it left the bottle. This is, well, it's called arrhythmia. It's something I've been working on for quite a while now. Well, I don't know what it'll do just yet, I said, confused at why I was even explaining to this thing. But I suppose professional courtesy wins out every time. I raised the glass and said, "Cheers." We both drank. I mean, I did. This weird fucker simply threw the liquid into its maw, and that's all I could tell you. And within a couple of minutes, the effects of each drink became apparent. I sat back and felt my body shiver as I pulled out my pocket watch, and I stared at it wistfully, my eyes hazing over as I smiled from ear to ear. Meanwhile, the figure opposite me coughed and sputtered, anger again building in their frame as they tried to throw the drink back up. The retching gave way to the sound of sliding wet meat as hands emerged from the mouth and began to try to claw their way out. Screams erupting from the creature, while I did nothing to stop them or react to them, instead fixated on what was in my pocket watch.
How dare you? I am the rightful god of this realm. You cannot take my claim to rights away like this. This is not how it's supposed to be.
He screeched, an arm now nearly free from the mouth and pulling at the table in front blindly, attempting to grab something other than the air in a vain attempt to stop whatever the drink had done. Kraus, beneath his chair a few feet away from the beast, hollered out,
Are you gonna deal with that John Carpenter reject or what?
but all I could do was smile. Since you're going to forget in a minute, and I suppose I am too, I'll let you in on what just happened. I began, a sliver of tears running down my cheek as I felt the lump in my throat. What I just took was an experiment to see if I could recall why I fought so hard in this job, why I took it in the first place. Because all I had before was this feeling when I looked at my pocket watch. Nothing else. He stopped thrashing as hard and, though still coughing, focused on my words. I did it. I remembered why I'm here and what we are doing. But like you, I'll forget soon. I pointed to his drink and then to my head, pulling the trigger of a gun and imitating an explosion. The Pilgrim's Choice is a reset button of sorts. We have a few of those here, but most are more subtle. Some deal with key moments in life or choices we can try again. Yours is a total wipe, and you'll forget how you found this place, who I am, and what all of this even is. The only one who's going to remember everything is him. I pointed towards the still mostly hidden Kraus, who looks at me and mouths the words, "fuck off" at me silently. eyes awash with incredulity and anger. I guess it's a twist on that old legend of adversaries, isn't it? Instead of one remembers and one forgets, we both forget, but someone always remembers. I watched the creature fall to the floor and cough heavily, choking on the fluid and trying in vain to bring it up. I knelt down low and showed him the contents of the pocket watch, still smiling, but with a fresh anger within. This is what I fight for. This is what I remember. Even if you don't, I know what you did, and I will stay in this bar 1,000 more years if it means my end of the deal is held up. I will be dust before I give in. Every time I feel like quitting without realizing it, this photo will push me on. You will never win, Amos. I lean in closer and stare deep into that gaping maw, holding the photo of a younger me in my arms, wrapped around a woman my age. The photo faded, but the love and comfort it brought amplified by the drink, hands shaking as I let my smile slip for a moment. Not in this or any realm. Amos screamed and began to fade from the room, dissipating into a hiss of black smoke as his free arms reached one last time to grab for me, aiming for the pocket watch. As the smoke cleared, I stood silently and clutched it tightly to my chest, tears flowing down my face as I felt the memories already fading. The potency of the drink obviously not strong enough. Kraus scrambled from his spot and came over to me, waving his hand in front of me, but to no avail.
Sully, buddy, you okay?
I'm sorry, but it'll be a little while before I remember again. But I will keep my promise. Always. I will remember to save, I whispered, closing the pocket watch and wiping my eyes as I felt the last of that familiarity fade from me.
What the hell was that, Sully? Old friend of yours? From before the bar?
I looked at him, perplexed, Cheddar whining at my heels and trying to jump up for a hug. Do me a solid, clean up the pee, would you? I need to take care of this little fella and fix him something to eat. Kraus looked confused, but shrugged and made a beeline for the bar, grabbing a rag and muttering,
Well, at least weird shit I've done today. So why the hell not? Fuck, my face hurts. I better be getting some Emporium whiskey on the house for this.
I laughed as I carried Cheddar to the fridge. Thanks, Naya.
Naya? Who's that?
I came to, Kraus standing over me and inspecting my face. Kraus. I meant Kraus. I don't know why I said Naya. I rubbed my head, the feeling in my limbs returning and vigor quickly running through my body.
Jesus. Remind me to never drink around you and not pay my tab.
Kraus comments as he helps me to my feet, obviously unable to quantify how this was happening, but unwilling to question it. Nell had been fixing up the two on the floor while I was out cold. The concrete-like substance gone from disquiet, and the hilariously adorned cheddar collar back on its rightful owner as Reverence sat upright, his hulking frame shifting from side to side as he tried to get free from the razor-thin wire bindings Nell had wrapped him and his compatriot in. She looked over at me and smiled. Cheddar was still passed out in his bed at the end of the bar, stuffed animal in his mouth and blanket around his lower half, drool covering the floor.
Your dog is one hell of a fighter when he wants to be, Sullivan,
she said softly, breathing heavily herself and putting the bottle away.
Reverence didn't know what to make of his second form, but after all that, he just sleeps like a normal dog. He's such a good boy.
She rubbed the top of his head as he whimpered and chewed down on his toy.
Now, we have a problem to deal with,
she said, dusting off her hands and walking over to the two hooded forms on the floor, her determination absolute as she pulled over a chair, yanked at Disquiet's hand and placed it on the seat.
This is futile. I will not falter in my faith. Even if my mission has failed and my lord punishes me, you cannot do anything to me he is not already deemed appropriate.
She looked up, eyeless but defiant, and smirked at Nell, who did not reciprocate.
Works for me. I have a different system to my protege over there that you tried to torture, so why waste any time?
She pulled her serrated blade, dripping in a thick substance, from her belt buckle with one hand and opened the creature compendium to a bookmarked section, reading aloud.
To maximize the efficiency of pain, one must be swift and decisive in their cut, but precise enough to leave the nerve endings open to the cool air. so the bleeding combined with the nerve damage keeps your prey in a constant state of pain-riddled inertia.
Without hesitation, she brings the coated blade down and drives it into Disquiet's hand, severing 2 fingers below the knuckle. The fluid bubbling the second it meets the exposed flesh and begins pulling at the bones, the sinew, and the nerves, exposing them further out from the pulpy mass whence they came. Disquiet's ear-splitting screams were beyond measure. She desperately tried to get her body away from Nell, but the strategic wiring made it impossible. She instead shook in place, drool flowing from her mouth as her initial scream became a low moan, the pain putting her into a lulled state.
I will ask you a similar question to what you asked my student. How did you come to this place?
Reverence thrashed but said nothing to aid his fellow disciple, who continued to moan softly and whisper incoherently even as Nell brought the knife up.
I am not fooling around here, girl. Do you wish to break the laws this universe has in place? Do you think yourself that arrogant? You are not above creation. You do not stand shoulder to shoulder with our Lord. You are nothing more than a sin, waiting to be purged.
Disquiet's rage rising like the flames and settling as she smirked with her singed tongue.
That is absolutely fine, but I'm here to remind you that for every action...
She drives the knife into her remaining 3 digits, severing them completely as the process begins anew. She sits up and walks to the bar, finding a pulse thumper and downing it as Disquiet screams.
There's a consequence, and her name is Nell fucking Lockwood.
The screams once again gave way to moans, but this eventually turned into rapturous laughter, first from Disquiet and then from Reverence. At first, I thought it to be mania brought on by the pain, but as the black smoke filled the room, I knew something was imminent.
You are not the only one who has allies to save you. But I assure you, this is the last time. All things must eventually fade and be cannibalized into beautiful entropy.
Her agony taking a considerable toll on her as she faded into the smoke.
Reverence may fade, but your grief will not, for I will live. Your friend will rot.
Reverence bellowed as he too began to fade, the black smoke far thicker than before and engulfing the entirety of the bar as I ducked for cover, pulling the blanket over Cheddar's head. The form of Temperance broke through the smoke and stood in a small parting she'd made, her own vestments now on but the hood down, a smile across her face.
Sullivan, I come to you with a choice from Lord Amos. He wishes to give you 2 options before what he anticipates will be the final meeting you 2 share. The final meeting we all share, I imagine.
She gestured to the room like a proud parent before letting her arms fall listlessly to her side, biting her lip.
You see, in his omniscience, he figured out how to get here. It's the binding forces of this plane that allow us to step through those doors. In this case, it was the binding force of love.
She pulls something from her pocket and throws it to the ground in front of me with a thud. It's a black lockbox, the contents of which spill in front of me as my eyes widened.
Letty, to be exact. She's with us now, the constant supply of energy we need to get here, but alas, it is not nearly enough for my lord to step into this space. So, instead, in his infinite wisdom and gesture of goodwill, he offers you a most important choice.
Let me guess, join him or spend a lifetime in suffering? I call back, still under the desk and hoping I'm not stupid enough to get injured by every member of this fucking group, searching for a drink that can aid me and finding nothing in reach. She laughs, but there's something off about it. It's cruel, low, and frantic, as if she knows something I don't.
No, Sullivan. You're going to suffer either way. The choice is far more important than that. No drinks to save you, no weapons in sight, and no way out. Lord Amos knows this is your next true test. And how blessed am I that I get to administer it.
She laughs again. This time I hear a sizzling sound and a low hum growing in sound and intensity. Enough so that I look up to see her wielding a black flame in her hand, almost like concentrated black smoke, burning impossibly hot and shaking like lightning. Her eyes meet mine, and I sense her bloodlust as her grin twists, the lightning twisting with her.
This is a far stronger bonding agent sitting right here that we can utilize. Something so strong that the next time we step foot into this place, our Lord will be at our side, and he will complete what he started so long ago. That bonding agent isn't just in one vessel, however. It's in 3.
I took one look around the bar, first to Kraus, who is staring head-on at Temperance, next to Nell, who nods solemnly before grabbing at her blade, then to Cheddar, who hasn't stirred from under his blanket, still asleep and unaware. Finally to the photo on the floor of a young man and a woman with their arms wrapped around each other. The photo faded, but the love and warmth permeating from it even now.
Who will it be, Sully? Kraus? Nell? Or Cheddar?